Do you find yourself passing on great opportunities or saying no to that exciting promotion? Do you find yourself terrified of change? Do you want to know why that is? It's all because of your ego. Do you know your ego self? The ego self will keep you stuck in the same repetitive pattern for the rest of your life, if you allow it. We need to be willing to challenge that voice in our mind that says no when you really want to say yes. Hi, I'm Jen, and I'm one of the coaches here at 1 Year No Beer. I'm also the co-creator and one of the lead coaches of the Complete Control program, which is a highly successful coaching program for high-achieving individuals and entrepreneurs. I've helped hundreds of people transform their own lives, unlock themselves and their true powers, and create a future that they truly love. One of the big topics in coaching, my clients come to me and they want to talk about their ego. The ego is often misrepresented. Now, for example, when I grew up, I was taught that someone with an ego was someone with a fancy car and a good job. So I just thought that anyone rich and ambitious and successful was an ego. Now, I was wrong, because when I dived into the personal development world and learned what the ego is and its true purpose, I was surprised but also amazed. The ego's sole purpose is to keep us safe. It'll have us repeating the same patterns every day, morning to night, morning to night. The sheer idea of stepping out of this can be terrifying, which is most often than not, do we not go for change? We'll just try and stay the same. This is why people come in and they say, I want the change, but I'm not able to do it. Why? This is when I introduce them to the ego and the concept of the ego and its purpose. So bad habits like smoking, drinking, gambling, social media, all these things to excess, we know it's not good for us, but why is it so hard to stop? Well, well-formed habits, but also it's predictable. The outcome of drinking or doing these said bad habits is predictable. So the ego goes, it's safe. Thumbs up. Change, however, is seen as unpredictable, which is not safe. So the ego does not like change, which is why it will have us stuck in the same bad or good habits again and again. We all know that change, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be hard. Getting fit is hard. Eating healthier, losing some weight, whatever it is that we try to do, it's going to be tough. And if we've got the ego in the back of our mind saying, what's the point? This is not going to work anyway. It works for others. It's not going to work for you, because the ego doesn't want you to experience the hurt. So where does the ego come from? Where is it created? Well, again, we're gonna go all the way back to when we were younger. The way we saw life, the way that the world was shown to us by our parents, by our community, and how we saw the life and world then. In her book, How to Do the Work, Dr. Nicole Vipera describes the ego in the following manner. The ego is the great protector of the inner child. The ego is the I identity, who you think that you are, based on your learned experiences. So once again, we can trace back the ego to our childhood. The ego would have been created to protect that inner child, to protect that vulnerable, authentic side to us. The world would have shown us something. It could be something like big T trauma or small t trauma. It could have been a moment in time where a teacher said something mean, or we were bullied, or wherever we experienced something fearful. The ego is created just to protect that part of us that doesn't want to feel that pain again. Trauma is in the eye of the beholder. When a child experiences trauma, there will be a formation of protection, which is the ego. The ego is just who you think that you are. And so we have to be willing to want to challenge everything that we know about ourselves and start understanding who we truly are. What is the ego trying to protect? With my clients, we go and they tell me a little bit about their childhood. We can gain some insight as to where the ego was created and what purpose it serves. It's just trying to keep us safe. The ego isn't good or bad. It's just there and it's trying to protect us. So if we learn to sit with the ego and observe it and observe these patterns that we know isn't really who we are, but they feel so strongly. It's who we think that we are. If we're willing to challenge everything that we think we know about ourselves and learn the authentic side of us, we need to be willing to challenge the ego. So there is the egoic self, who you think you are, and then there is the authentic self, who you truly are. But something in your past, once, twice, or maybe many times, have proven that the authentic side of you isn't safe. It's not safe to show your true colors. It's not safe to express your needs. It's not safe to be who you truly are. So the ego takes a front seat. The ego, Dr. Nicole Vipera says in her book, the ego is the betrayal of who we truly are, just to protect ourselves. So when we realize that and realize the ego isn't bad, it's not good nor bad. It's just trying to keep ourselves. And us being willing to understand our authentic self and lean into that a little bit more and resist those limitations of the ego, that anything fear-based that we feel comes from the ego. It's what's going to keep us stuck. It's what's going to limit us. If we learn to lean into that desire of the things that we truly want and trust ourselves that we've got ourselves and learn to mute the ego a little bit, then we'll start seeing some incredible change in our life. The ego has a very strong sense of right or wrong. For example, having a discussion with a friend or a family member and you simply can't get on board with their point of view. And there we talk about control again, that need to control. Ego needs to follow its path the way it always has, because it's kept you alive until now. Remember, the ego's sole purpose is to make sure that you survive every day, morning to night, morning to night. And if anyone or anything gets in the way of that, there might be friction. We might find a really difficult time coping with this. These are some clear signs of us having a very strong ego. And this is where we should get curious and wanting to do some work. I have a little process that I do with my clients who have a tough time differentiating between the egoic self and their authentic self, and they don't know who is actually speaking. And I tell them to go and stand in the mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and repeat whatever words that you're trying to understand if it's your true feelings or not. If it's coming from the egoic self, you're going to feel an uncomfortable feeling, because on the inside, the authentic self will be screaming for the truth. When we learn to tap into that authentic self, we're going to be able to start separating the egoic self from the authentic self and understanding our true feelings and become more and more courageous and lean into that authentic side of us. We often hear people talk about the good angel and the bad devil on their shoulders and how often the devil on the shoulder tends to win. Well, that's simply the ego. Many people have different expressions to define the ego. That voice in the head, that strong sense of right or wrong. It all comes down to the same thing. It's the ego, no matter how you want to call it. So when you have that voice on your shoulder that tries to tell you to do something, you know you shouldn't be doing it. We simply listen to it and we don't go for the promotion. We don't go for that exciting opportunity simply because the fear of failure, the fear of proving our bullies in our past right is too strong. So we don't listen to it. So how do we learn to work with it? Well, we can learn to work with our mind and our nervous system and all those auto responses. We can learn to rewire our brain a little bit and teach ourselves that we're safe. We've got it. Then it's not now. When we have a response to something and we've done the work of identifying where these patterns come from, what the ego is trying to protect, then we can talk ourselves off the ledge a little bit. We can kind of tell ourselves, hey, this is not actually happening right now. This is just a memory and this is a reaction and a response to something that happened a long time ago. We don't need to be fearful now. We don't need to hold ourselves back. It's safe. These are the kind of small conversations which might make us feel a little bit crazy, but these are the kind of conversations with ourselves which makes all the difference. Just being courageous and being willing to challenge that person that we think that we are in order to figure out who we truly are, that is the biggest step forward. So we're not trying to get rid of the ego. We're just trying to understand it and its purpose. When we learn to understand the ego and understand our true selves, our authentic self, and learn to lean into that a little bit more, then we will see some beautiful change. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, just click subscribe and we'll see each other in the next video.